The mouse watched quietly as the pet walked into the room, sensing a presence so unusual yet strangely comforting. The pet noticed the mouse near the corner. And though the pet was larger, the mouse stood its ground. The mouse twitched its whiskers with curiosity. And the pet tilted its head in gentle wonder. The mouse felt the heartbeat of the world in that small silence. And the pet felt the same vibration through instinct. The mouse darted across the floor. And the pet followed, not with anger but with playful energy. The mouse realized the pet was not a predator. And the pet realized the mouse was not a threat. The mouse and pet shared a strange spark, a link that words could never describe. The mouse climbed up a chair leg. And the pet sat back, respecting the mouse's effort. The mouse looked into the pet's eyes. And the pet saw a reflection of loyalty in the mouse. The mouse and pet felt the beginnings of a story only they could write. The mouse crept closer to the pet, testing the fragile thread of trust. The pet remained calm, showing the mouse patience in its stillness. The mouse sniffed the paw of the pet, and the pet did not move. The mouse and pet understood something about each other without needing language. The mouse offered a small crumb from the floor, and the pet lowered its nose to acknowledge. The mouse had never shared so freely, and the pet had never received so humbly. The mouse and pet began to sense a rhythm of companionship in each motion. The mouse knew survival depended on caution, and the pet knew strength demanded gentleness. The mouse stood on two legs to look higher, and the pet crouched lower to meet the mouse halfway. The mouse and pet discovered balance in opposite gestures. The mouse scurried to the window, and the pet followed with steady steps. The mouse tapped the glass with tiny paws, and the pet pushed with a larger nose. The mouse wanted to see the outside world, and the pet wanted to protect the mouse from dangers beyond. The mouse and pet became guardians of each other in ways unseen. The mouse leapt onto the sill, and the pet sat below like a watchful shadow. The mouse twitched its ears at birds outside, and the pet wagged a tail in quiet agreement. The mouse knew freedom called, but the pet knew safety mattered more. The mouse and pet respected the difference between dreams and reality. The mouse squeaked softly, and the pet answered with a small growl of affection. The mouse and pet built a language of sounds without words. The mouse explored cracks in the wall, and the pet waited patiently nearby. The mouse found crumbs hidden away, and the pet sniffed curiously without taking them. The mouse shared food in spirit, and the pet shared protection in presence. The mouse had never known generosity, and the pet had never known restraint. The mouse and pet shaped each other in unseen lessons. The mouse trusted steps that once feared giants, and the pet softened strength once used only for dominance. The mouse and pet no longer felt like strangers but family. The mouse carried tiny courage, and the pet carried mighty tenderness. The mouse lived in shadows, and the pet lived in light, yet together they lived in harmony. The mouse and pet became symbols of two worlds crossing. The mouse climbed onto the back of the pet one evening, holding tight to fur. The pet walked slowly, carrying the mouse with care like a guardian. The mouse felt the power of the pet beneath, and the pet felt the trust of the mouse above. The mouse and pet fused into a single spirit of companionship. The mouse squeaked in delight, and the pet barked softly in reply. The mouse shone with joy, and the pet glowed with pride. The mouse and pet no longer wondered why they met, only that they belonged. The mouse inspired the pet to be gentle, and the pet inspired the mouse to be bold. The mouse and pet transformed the ordinary room into a kingdom of friendship. The mouse and pet proved that even the smallest and the mightiest can write a forever bond together. The mouse woke before dawn, and the pet was already guarding the quiet shadows where the mouse lived. The mouse felt warmth in the silence, and the pet felt purpose in the watchfulness. The mouse darted across the floor to nibble on crumbs, and the pet lowered its head to shield the mouse from sudden danger. The mouse knew hunger as a constant, and the pet knew loyalty as a duty. The mouse and pet shaped mornings into rituals of survival and trust. The mouse climbed onto a pile of books, and the pet nudged the stack so the mouse could reach higher. The mouse spread whiskers against the air, and the pet wagged a tail at the sight of bravery. The mouse and pet made exploration into a shared adventure. The mouse squeaked with pride, and the pet barked softly in harmony. The mouse and pet felt that the world itself paused to honor their bond. The mouse sniffed the night air, and the pet pressed close to offer warmth. The mouse feared owls above the trees, and the pet promised safety through presence. The mouse trembled in shadows, and the pet stood tall in light. The mouse and pet blended weakness with strength into one force. The mouse leaned against the paw of the pet, and the pet let the mouse rest in peace. The mouse dreamed of freedom in open fields, and the pet dreamed of loyalty beside the mouse forever. The mouse lived by instincts of survival, and the pet lived by instincts of companionship. The mouse and pet became two sides of a story no hunter could end. The mouse trusted the paw prints of the pet, and the pet trusted the heartbeat of the mouse. The mouse and pet wrote history together. One shared breath at a time. The mouse ran across the old wooden floor, and the pet followed with steady footsteps that shook the boards. The mouse looked back with fearless eyes, and the pet gazed forward with protective calm. The mouse trusted the rhythm of those steps, and the pet trusted the courage in those tiny whiskers. The mouse and pet moved like partners through a world that once separated them. The mouse reached for crumbs beneath the chair, and the pet bowed down so the mouse could eat in safety. The mouse stored food for darker nights, and the pet kept watch to ensure no danger stole that hope. The mouse twitched with excitement at new discoveries, and the pet wagged in quiet pride at the mouse's bravery. The mouse and pet learned that survival was easier when shared. The mouse climbed a curtain rope, and the pet crouched below, ready to catch the mouse if the climb failed. The mouse squeaked with triumph from the top, and the pet barked approval from the ground. The mouse wandered into the garden, and the pet guarded the path from hidden predators. The mouse sniffed fresh leaves with wonder, and the pet stood tall to keep the mouse safe under the open sky. The mouse lived in smallness but carried vast dreams, and the pet lived in bigness but carried humble patience. The mouse and pet shaped nature into a playground of balance. The mouse curled beneath a fallen leaf, and the pet lay beside the garden wall to guard through the night. The mouse watched stars flicker above, and the pet howled softly to honor the sky. The mouse wondered about destiny, and the pet wondered only about the bond in front of its heart. The mouse and pet redefined love between species once meant to fear each other. The mouse stood tiny against the wind, and the pet stood mighty as a shield. The mouse and pet created a friendship greater than fear, greater than hunger, greater than time itself.